A storm stranded me in a place that wasn't on any map. The signs were rusted, the air too still, and the people too quiet. A paper on my motel bed listed rules in shaky handwriting. I broke one before I finished reading the rest. I was halfway through my solo road trip from Portland to Denver when the skies turned an ugly shade of bruised gray. One moment it was sunny, and the next, it was like God had spilled ink across the sky. My phone lost signal first. Then, the GPS began glitching, showing my car jerking back and forth on a blank, unnamed part of the map. No roads, no names, just nothing. The rain came fast, sheets of it crashing against my windshield, my wipers moving frantically. I squinted through the blur and realized I couldn't even see the road anymore. That's when I saw the turnoff. A crooked metal sign jutted from the weeds, rusted so badly the name was illegible, maybe not even there to begin with. But what caught my eye was the arrow pointing left and the faint glimmer of lights beyond the trees. I didn't want to crash into a ditch, and I sure as hell didn't want to spend the night trapped in my car. So I turned. The trees opened into a wide clearing with a town nestled quietly in the valley below. It looked old, 1920s maybe. Too preserved, too clean. I eased down the hill, my tires crunching over gravel. No reception, no traffic, no people. But there were lights in the windows. Yellow, flickering, alive. I parked in front of what appeared to be a motel. Rest Easy Inn, the wooden sign said, dangling by one chain. I got out, drenched in seconds, and hurried through the creaking glass doors. The lobby smelled like cedar wood and something older. Dust, maybe. The woman at the desk looked like she'd stepped out of a black and white photo, neatly curled gray hair, an old green sweater, cat-eyed glasses. No reservations needed, she said with a smile. You're just in time for the rain. She slid a key across the counter. Room 3.NOID. No payment, just the key. What's this place called? I asked. She paused. People just call it the town. No, real name. Her smile didn't waver. You'll be safe if you follow the rules. What rules? She pointed to a folded slip of paper on the counter. They're in your room. I should have left then, but I didn't. Room 3 was small, musty, and smelled faintly of mothballs and soap. A single light bulb buzzed above me. There was an old mirror, cracked at the edges, a desk with a Gideon Bible, and a neatly folded towel on the bed. On top of it was the paper. Rules were typed unevenly, like from an old typewriter. Rules for surviving the night in the town. Read carefully. Do not go outside between 2:13 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. under any circumstances. If you hear footsteps in the hallway, lock the door and do not respond, no matter who calls your name. You may see another version of yourself in the mirror. Do not speak to it. Do not blink. You must be asleep by 4 a.m. The lights will go out at 4:01. Do not be awake when that happens. If you hear a knock at exactly 3 a.m., cover your ears. Don't listen to what it says. Don't ask for directions to leave. If someone offers refuse. I was about to read number 7 when the lights flickered. A cold draft swept the room. I glanced at the mirror and froze. It wasn't showing my reflection. It was showing me, but I was still at the door. I watched my mirrored self enter the room and slowly turn toward me. Its eyes were too wide, too dark, and then it smiled. I blinked. The mirror returned to normal. Just my reflection again, but something had changed. The silence had weight now, like the room was holding its breath. I turned the rules over, blank. I never read the 7th rule. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay on the bed with one eye on the door, the other on the mirror. At 2:13 a.m., I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down the hall. Then came the whispered "my" name. Not screamed, not called. Whispered, soft and urgent. Alex, let me in. I didn't move. My hand was frozen on the doorknob, trembling. The voice grew louder. Alex, you left me behind. Don't you remember? I backed away. I pressed my hands over my ears. Then the doorknob began to turn locked. Thank God. But it twisted harder. Something slammed into the door. I ran to the desk and pushed it against it. The knocking stopped at 3:33 exactly. Like a switch had been flipped. Silence again. At 4 a.m., the lights flickered violently. And then they went out. I don't know what happened in the dark, but I woke up at sunrise, on the floor, gasping, and the motel door was open. The streets outside were busy, the same town, but now it had people. Dozens of them, walking slowly. Too slowly, none of them speaking, eyes glassy, clothes out of time, like they all belonged to different decades. I asked a man what the name of the town was. He smiled. You'll remember when it's too late. The streets looked normal, but the people weren't real. A smiling boy handed me a broken watch that ticked backward. Every clock in town showed a different time, except one. And when that one struck midnight, the screaming started. When I stepped out into the morning light, everything looked deceptively peaceful. The storm was gone, and the air had that early autumn chill, crisp and quiet. The same road that had led me into town was still there, but something in me knew, deep in the gut, that if I tried to drive away, I wouldn't make it far. Maybe I already wasn't on Earth anymore. Maybe this town existed somewhere else entirely. Motel lady was gone. No one acknowledged me as they passed. They didn't even blink. Just smiled, frozen, mannequin smiles, and walked in slow, measured steps like they were part of some parade that only they could hear the music to. I tried my phone. Still no signal. The battery, full last night, was now drained. I wandered. For a while, searching for anything familiar or a path that could lead me out. That's when I saw the boy. He was maybe 8 or 9. Pale skin, short brown hair, dirty overalls. He sat on a rusted swing that moved even though there was no wind. His head was tilted toward the ground, and in his small hands, he held something. Wrapped in a tattered cloth. As I passed, he looked up and smiled. "You're new," he said. I stopped. My voice was raw. "Yeah, what is this place?" He held out the cloth. I hesitated, then took it. Inside was an old pocket watch, silver, elegant, but the glass was cracked, and the second hand was ticking. "Backward. It's broken," I said. "No," he whispered. "It's waking up." The kid leapt off the swing and ran before I could stop him, disappearing behind a row of decaying brick buildings. I stared down at the watch and noticed something. Etched into the back, "Return to Elias, the clockmaker." I asked the first person I saw, a woman in a faded blue dress with torn lace gloves, if she knew where Elias lived. She didn't blink, just pointed down the street, past the old bakery, behind the church that no longer had a cross. I followed her direction, and after walking for 10 minutes in silence, because everyone in this town moved like ghosts, I found it, the clockmaker's house. It stood tall and narrow, like it had grown too fast and wasn't sure how to stop. Wood paneling dark with age, the windows covered in brown paper, and a sign above the door that read simply, "Time doesn't heal." I knocked once. The door creaked open by itself. Inside was a jungle of clocks. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Grandfather clocks, wall clocks, cuckoo clocks, pocket watches, digital clocks, all blinking random numbers. None of them ticked the same. Some didn't tick at all, and then I saw him. Sitting in a leather armchair at the far end of the hall was a man in a white apron, smeared with grease and soot. His face was long, his eyes sunken, and his left hand was entirely made of blackened metal, like the skeletal remains of a clock tower's mechanism. "You brought it back," he said before I could speak. I held up the watch. "You're Elias?" "I was," he replied, before I ran out of time. I handed him the watch. His metal hand shook slightly as he took it, then stopped completely. "You opened the wrong door last night," he said. I froze. "What do you mean?" "There are rules. Not just the ones they gave you." He gestured around. "Time has rules, too. And when it breaks here, it doesn't repair. It resets. Over and over again." He pointed at the only clock in the room that worked properly. A tall, ornate grandfather clock with a silver pendulum. That's the true timekeeper of this town. When it strikes midnight, the town resets. But not everyone resets with it. I shivered. What happens to the ones who don't? His eyes darkened. They scream, because they remember. Elias stood and opened a drawer, removing another slip of paper. It looked identical to the rules sheet from the motel, but the text was different. He handed it to me. "Rules for surviving the time loop. Clockmaker's edition. Find the boy by sunset." He holds the next key. "Do not touch any clock after dark. They will drain you. If a version of yourself appears before midnight, run. It is not you. It never was. Avoid the church bell. If it rings, someone dies. At midnight, hide. Do not look at the sky. Do not watch the stars change. Don't fall asleep in the same place twice. The town will trap you. If time moves backward for more than 60 seconds, "You're already too late." A loud bang shook the walls. A clock fell from the wall behind Elias and shattered on the floor. "They know you're learning," he said quietly. The clocks around us all began ticking, some slow, some fast, some in reverse. Then, one by one, they began to chime. Elias grabbed my arm. "You have until midnight. After that, this version of the town burns." "What happens to the people?" I asked. "They're not people anymore. They're echoes." I ran out of the clockmaker's house just as the sky began to darken, even though it wasn't yet noon. Time was folding in on itself, somewhere in this place. The boy had the next key, and I had just a few hours to find him before the stars started moving again. I found the boy hiding in a pew, whispering to no one. The church had no cross, no altar, only a hole in the floor. Every window looked out at a different version of the town, and when the bell rang, I saw who the prayers were for. The sky was sick. That was the only way I could describe it, as though the color had been bled out and replaced with a dull, rotting bruise. Every cloud seemed suspended, frozen mid-stretch. No wind, no birds, just the distant ticking that never stopped. Even though I'd left the clockmaker's house behind and I needed to find the boy before sunset, that I retraced my steps back toward the old swing set where I'd first seen him. It was abandoned now, swaying gently though the air was still. Behind the swing, a crumbling path led to an overgrown cemetery, and beyond that, the church it rose from the hill like a jagged tooth, blackened with age and wrapped in dead vines. The steeple had long collapsed, and where a cross might have once stood, only a rusted nail remained. No one was outside. No one ever was when I needed to find them. Still, I had a feeling the boy was in there. The heavy wooden doors opened with a slow groan. Inside, everything smelled like wet stone and burned paper. The pews were cracked and uneven. The walls were lined with candle holders, but the candles were melted down to nothing. No altar stood at the front. Instead, there was a gaping hole in the floor, perfectly round and pitch black, as if someone had dug into the earth and kept digging until they reached something else. That I stepped closer, and my ears rang, not with sound, but silence. A violent silence, like the absence of everything human. Then I heard it. A whisper. I turned and saw him. The boy, huddled behind a broken pew, rocking slightly. His eyes were shut, his lips moving without sound, like he was praying. "Hey," I whispered. "It's me, remember?" He looked up. "Shoo, he's almost awake." I crouched. "Who?" "The one beneath," he said. "The one they all worship now." I grabbed his shoulder. "You said I needed a key. Do you still have it?" The boy blinked, confused for a moment. Then slowly, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal object. A key shaped like a crescent moon, rusted at the teeth. He placed it in my hand. "You'll need it when the church bell rings." "But the bell doesn't ring," I said. His face grew pale. "It's not supposed to." Behind me, the church doors slammed shut, and the bell did ring. It told once. Then again. 12 times. Midnight. But it was still daylight outside. The boy screamed. "He's here. He's awake." The hole in the floor began to breathe. That's the only word I have for it. It expanded and contracted like a massive lung, exhaling cold, fetid air that smelled of rot and iron. The pews began to shake. Dust rained from the rafters, and then they arrived. Not people. Shadows. They walked through the walls, tall and thin, with heads like broken clocks. No faces, just rings of rusted gears where eyes and mouths should have been. They moved in jerks, as if controlled by unseen hands winding them forward. One of them pointed at me. Another hissed. The boy grabbed my arm. "Don't look at them too long. They remember your face." We ran, down the side aisle, behind the pulpit, past the whispering hole. Every step felt like I was sinking into something I couldn't see. The back of the church was a spiral staircase that descended into darkness. The boy didn't hesitate. He ran first. I followed. The shadows didn't chase. They just watched. And somewhere behind me, the hole stopped breathing. The basement of the church was colder than anything I'd ever felt. Stone walls slick with moisture. The air smelled like mildew and something dead. The boy led me through a narrow hallway of decayed murals, faded depictions of saints being burned, drowned, and torn apart by things with no names. We reached a door at the end. It was made of bone. The moon key fit perfectly. Inside was a library, hundreds of books, scrolls, relics, and in the center, a man tied to a chair, his mouth sewn shut with barbed wire. The boy turned to me. That's the priest. He tried to stop them. I felt bile rise in my throat. Stop what? The town, he said. It isn't just haunted. It's kept alive. He pointed to a book on the nearest pedestal. It was bound in stitched leather. The cover marked with the same clock face symbol I'd seen in the mirror the night before. The title read, Chronicles of the Sacrificed Loop, 1871, Infinity. I opened it. Inside were names. Thousands of them. Dates of arrival. Times of death. Some crossed out. Others marked, preserved. Then I saw mine. Alex Monroe, arrived. Present day, status. In flux below it, one line. Must choose before the third toll. What does it mean? I asked the boy. You'll find out, he whispered. When the bell rings again. Suddenly, everything shook that a new sound echoed through the floorboards. A rhythmic, awful scraping. Like claws on stone. Like something huge crawling its way up from the hole in the church floor. The boy grabbed the book, ripped out a single page, and stuffed it into my coat pocket. Go to the house with no doors, he said. That's where you make your choice. But what about you? He smiled, sadly. This is my third loop. I don't get another. Before I could protest, he shoved me backward. A trapdoor opened beneath my feet, and I fell into darkness that I landed on pavement. Outside, the church behind me, silent again. No sign of the boy. No bell. No door. The town around me had changed. The buildings looked older. The sky was darker. People now walked with strings attached to their limbs, vanishing around corners I knew didn't exist before. I pulled the torn page from my coat pocket and read it. Final warning. If the church bell tolls again, you will forget your own name. If the boy dies, you inherit his memory. If you reach the house with no doors, knock 3 times, on nothing. If something knocks back, run. The streets began to fold like paper behind me. The town was erasing itself, and I was the last one inside. I reached the house with no doors, but something was already knocking. And what answered from the other side? Knew my name before I was born. Asterisk, there's no way to describe what the town became after the third toll, that it wasn't day or night anymore. The sky was a rotted canvas smeared with the static of stars that blinked in and out of existence. Buildings bled upward into shapes they weren't meant to be. Windows fusing shut, chimneys twisting into spires, shadows spilling where no light existed. The streets began to curl like paper left too long in fire. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. Only that the place I needed to reach didn't technically exist. The page the boy had given me burned hot in my pocket. When I looked down at it again, the ink had rearranged itself. Your memory is unspooling. The town is rebuilding itself in your shape. Find the house. You have until the last string breaks. I passed by people I'd seen before. Only now, their faces were warped, blurred like melted photographs. Their movements were jerky, mechanical, like puppets after the puppeteer died. Their mouths moved silently, over and over, repeating words I couldn't hear. Or maybe they were repeating my own name, but I no longer recognized it. A building collapsed beside me with a soft sigh. I didn't flinch. Something was coming, not loud, not fast, just certain, and it was erasing the town behind me as it moved. That's when I saw it. The house with no doors. It stood alone at the edge of the town's end, where the buildings had given up trying to exist and instead sank into the dirt like corpses. The house was tall and crooked, leaning slightly to the left. No windows, no doors, no signs of entry, but it was waiting. I stepped closer, and then something knocked. From the inside, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I stood frozen, remembering the last rule on the paper. If something knocks back, run. But I didn't, because I realized the truth that I'd knocked first. The walls of the house began to crack, and from them bled not water or dust, but memories that my childhood bedroom. My mother's voice. The smell of my father's garage. That day, I got lost in the woods when I was 9 and swore something was following me. The town was using me. That's why I'd been drawn here. Why the road appeared during the storm. Why the motel woman smiled without blinking. Why Elias had a metal hand and no heartbeat. Why the boy already knew who I was. Because I'd been here before. I was the loop. I was the seed. And if I didn't end it, the town would survive by becoming me. The doorless house cracked open like a shell and revealed a spiral staircase leading down. into nothing that I descended. With every step, the past peeled off me like old skin. I forgot what year it was. I forgot my last name, my birthday, what my job had been before the trip. The bottom of the staircase was a room of mirrors. Each one showed a different version of myself. One had scars I didn't remember. One was older. One was dead. One was still screaming. In the center of the room stood a figure cloaked in shadows, wearing a crown of gears. Its eyes were ticking clock hands. It spoke without moving its mouth. One of you must remain. The town needs a heart. And I knew what it meant. Someone had to stay. Someone always had to stay. That was the rule behind all the other rules. The boy was supposed to be next, but I'd taken his place. The figure raised a hand, and one of the mirrors slid forward. My reflection stepped out, but it wasn't me anymore. It was the version of me that had given up long ago. The one who had never escaped the first loop. The one who had screamed until he forgot how to breathe. He smiled. I ran. I shot up the staircase as the house began to collapse inward, floorboards splintering, steps vanishing under my feet. I burst through the wall. There was no door, remember, and fell into a street that no longer existed. The sky was white now, blank. The town was done with pretending that I could feel the final seconds ticking. I had one choice left. The paper in my pocket whispered, "Stand still, and you become part of the memory. Run, and you forget everything, but live. The town can't chase what doesn't know it exists." I didn't want to forget, but I didn't want to stay. I ran until my legs gave out, until the buildings turned to dust behind me, until the sky blinked off like a dying light bulb. And when I woke up, I was back on the highway. Rain soaked through my clothes. My car was just where I'd left it. No signs. No town. Just trees. I checked my phone. June 19th. One missed call. Unknown number. I opened the voicemail. A child's voice whispered, "You were supposed to stay." Epilogue. I try to remember what happened. Most days, it feels like a dream. But sometimes, in mirrors, just for a split second, I catch sight of someone else wearing my face. Someone still stuck in that place. And every now and then, I hear the bell. I thought I escaped, but the town remembered for me. It followed me into my life, slipping through mirrors and dreams. And when I saw my own obituary printed in tomorrow's paper, I realized I left someone behind, and he wants my life back. My name is Alex Monroe. I live in Denver now. Or, at least, I think I do. I've spent weeks pretending everything's fine. I go to work. I buy groceries. I talk to neighbors. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. Not by something outside, but by my own shadow. I used to believe I made it out of that nameless town. But lately, I'm not so sure. It started with a mirror in my hallway. There's a narrow floor-length mirror mounted beside the front door. I pass it every morning. But 3 days ago, the reflection was wrong. My keys weren't in my hand. My shirt was the wrong color. And the face looking back at me didn't blink when I did. I smashed it that night. I told myself it was stress, trauma, maybe even psychosis. That's what my therapist said when I finally tried to talk about it. But he called me by the wrong name halfway through the session. He called me Elias. I found something else today. A newspaper, folded neatly on my doorstep. No name, no delivery date. The headline read, "Local man presumed dead after disappearance. Body never found. A. Monroe, 32, last seen driving into forested area near Idaho border." There was a photo. It was me. But not the me that stands here now. It was the other one. The looped one. The version of me that never got out. The one I left behind. And beneath the photo, a chilling final line. "If seen, do not engage." Subject is known to repeat behavior. That night, someone knocked at my door 3 times. Not frantic. Not slow. Just rhythmic. I didn't answer. But when I checked the peephole, no one was there. Just my reflection, watching me from the other side of the glass. No eyes. Just spinning clock gears behind the sockets. I received a package the next day. Inside was a silver pocket watch, cracked and ticking backward. A note was folded underneath, scrawled in my own handwriting. "Time is folding again. You didn't run far enough. You never left. You just left me. Now I'm coming to trade places." I haven't slept. Every time I close my eyes, I dream of that town, but it's no longer static. It's rebuilding. It has roads now, reaching out like fingers. The motel is gone. The church is burning. And there, standing where the house with no doors used to be, is me. But he's not trapped anymore. Last night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in my hallway. I live alone. I grabbed a knife and crept forward, heart hammering. When I reached the mirror, the one I had shattered, I saw it had returned. Whole, polished, perfect, and the person in it was smiling. But I wasn't. I ran. I packed a bag, threw it in the car, and drove as far from the city as I could. I headed for the desert, anywhere that felt empty. I didn't stop until my car gave out in the middle of nowhere, and then I saw it. A crooked metal sign, rusted and broken, pointing down a narrow dirt road. No name. Just the arrow, just like before, and in the distance, flickering lights. I should have kept driving. But my legs moved on their own. I followed the road. The trees were gone. Now there were mirrors growing from the ground, tilted at every angle. Each one showed a different version of me. One crying, one sleeping, one grinning with teeth too sharp. Then, I found the final one. It wasn't a reflection. It was a door, and something behind it whispered, "Welcome back, Alex. We missed your heartbeat." Now I sit here, in the middle of nowhere, writing this. If you're reading it, don't look for me. Don't follow roads that don't exist on a map. Don't knock if a house has no doors. And if you see someone who looks exactly like you, run, because that's not you anymore. It's the part you left behind.